Peter Waters celebrates the recent damp weather. Is this a secret weapon he's got? Well, Peter seems to think so.
Well, hello once again and welcome to the Waters and Stanton video channel. You know, we've had a really hard winter here in the UK and I think probably around Europe as well. Not sure what it's like in the rest of the Northern Hemisphere, but we've had ice and icicles, we've had frost, we've had snow. But here we are today, early March, the sun's out and it looks as if the temperature's rising. But you know, the good news from a ham radio point of view is that the ground is still soft. Now, if you're thinking of putting stakes in the ground or putting up aerial masts or putting radials out, then it's a good idea to think about it now. You know, where I live here, we've got a very clay soil. Now, clay has a habit of being very soft in the winter, but it's rock hard in late spring and summer. And that is the time when you don't want to have to start digging. So let me talk about several jobs that you might think about doing. This is an item that I purchased from Amazon last year. It cost me £22.95, but it's great for digging holes. It means to say that you can bore a hole in the ground without having to use a spade and without having to make a bigger hole than what you really need. You can get different sizes of these. I think this is the 4 or 5 inch one, and it does me fine for some of the lightweight masts that I've put in the ground recently. So I'd recommend this. I'm not sure what the technical name is. I'm sure you'll tell me. Anyway, it's a great device for digging out the soil and putting the base for your mast in the ground. Now, another job I've got to do is to put the radials in the ground. It's always a task that I don't really look forward to because there's not a quick way really of doing it. Well, I've started to untangle some of these radials. I'm afraid it's a bit of a rat's nest at the moment, but I've got to untangle these and I've got to get them in the ground before it gets too hard. Now, I used to use a spade for this job, but I found that this edging tool is better. You seem to sort of get the job done a bit quicker. The spade sometimes has a bit of a struggle to go through the ground, but this gets the job done. An edger. This seems to go in the ground quite easily actually. Just put the pressure there. You can see how soft the ground is. You just keep a line there, and you're ready to just put your radials in the ground there. And within a couple of weeks, you won't even know they're there. The ground would have settled over it. And I hope you like these posh, I think they call them Crocs or something. They're not the sort of shoes I would go out in, but they're great to slip on when you want to nip out in the garden. If I was going to do the job properly, then I'd wear some proper shoes. I'm not sure what I wear actually. I'll probably end up wearing these. Now, I'm a great fan of the German-made spider pole, spider beams mast, these fiberglass masts that go up to tremendous heights, like Jack and the Beanstalk, isn't it? But they really are useful. This particular one goes up to about 38 or 39 feet, I think. What's that in metres? I don't know. About 12 metres, I think, is the term that some of our younger viewers would like me to use, but great. The good thing about spider poles is they are really rugged. You know, a lot of these fiberglass masts, they look okay, but a year or so down the line, once they've seen a bit of sunshine and a bit of rain and all the other weather that tends to get slung at us year after year, they suffer a bit. But the spider beam's spider pole is a grade or so up from there. Now, how do you actually support the mast? Well, I've found that a bit of angle iron is as good as anything. This particular bit is not quite long enough, but it demonstrates the point. If you put some angle iron in the ground, that mast will sit against that angle iron, and all you need then is some hose clamps. Believe me, it works wonderfully well. Now, you may have your own source for angle iron. I got this bit from B&Q. Now, I'm not paid to advertise B&Q. I've mentioned it before, actually, or then before. I'm not paid to actually promote B&Q. But sometimes there's no alternative. You can get thicker and longer pieces, and that is really what you need. But of course you may have your own source. I mean, it's a sort of thing that you can probably find lying about if you know where to find it. So this is my recommendation. A bit of angle iron in the ground, and that really does fit snugly. It's a lovely fit. When it comes to putting the base spike or the base angle iron in, if you go down to your local ironmongers, I won't mention B&Q again, oh, just have. When you go down to your local ironmongers, you can get these small bags of, I think they call it fence post cement. Anyway, basically you've got a bag of sand inside the cement, and you mix it up, put a bit of water with it, bung it in the hole, put the angle iron in, make sure it's vertical of course, and leave it for a day or so, and then you've got a nice firm base for your spider pole. So that's my recommendation. Now, I just had some images from my business associate, Mike, G3SED, from his little back garden in Portsmouth. And it's amazing what he squeezes into this little back garden he's got in Portsmouth. He's recently installed a 7-element Yagi for 6 meters with a boom which I think is around about 35 foot long, which is roughly, give or take, about 10 meters long. Now, why is Mike putting up this antenna? Well, the reason is that we're coming towards the Sporadic E period. Sporadic E is a propagation that takes place predominantly during the spring and early summer months. It goes from April up to around about July. There is a shorter period around about December which is not so prominent, but the main propagation occurs during these months, April through to July. It's a reflective layer that is somewhat lower than the normal layers that reflect signals, but it has the ability to reflect VHF signals. This means to say that it can propagate signals from, well, even 10 meters actually, from 28 megahertz up to around about 2 meters. The two bands that are most affected by it and dramatically affected by it are 6 meters and 4 meters. Now, on those two bands, you normally work line of sight, or if there's tropo, then you'll work further. But when sporadic E occurs, it's dramatic, and you can hear S9 signals sometimes from Spain, from Portugal, from Eastern Europe. The title gives you a clue. It is sporadic. You don't know when it's going to happen. You know the period of year it's likely to happen, but you don't know on a daily basis or even on an hourly basis when it's going to happen. Sometimes it will last for 2 or 3 hours, sometimes for 20 minutes, sometimes even less than that. It's a very unstable reflective layer, and it is also very focused. You might be working a station in Portugal, whereas somebody 50 miles away can't even hear that signal, and of course vice versa. So it can be frustrating sometimes that you hear somebody working a station over some significant distance, you can't hear it, but that's the nature of sporadic E. The important thing is to get ready for it, and you don't need anything fancy in the way of antennas. You can use a vertical actually, but it is an advantage to have a directional antenna. which is why Mike has put up this antenna in his back garden. But I was quite surprised to see how many antennas we do that cover 2 meters and 4 meters. Some of them are dual band antennas, and I'm just going to put on the screen now a range of the antennas that are on our website. And it's well worth having a look at those. Some of them are not that expensive, and if you have a dual band one, of course, not only can you work Sporadic E, but for normal tropo or normal chatting, you can have a directional antenna. And of course, because it's 4 meters and 6 meters, they're not that big, unless, of course, you go for a 7 element with a boom of 10 meters long in your back garden. Sorry, Mike. There we are. So, 6 meters and 4 meters. I always remember, it must be about 4 or 5 years ago now, and it was late afternoon, and I was tuning around the 6 meter band, which is not a band I normally operate on, and there was a GM station calling CQ, and he was really 5 and 9 plus, and I when I heard it, I thought I was a pirate, obviously a pirate, and then when I thought about it, I thought, well, no, he's not a pirate. And I went to call him back, and he called CQ again, and he was about S5, and at the end of that CQ he disappeared completely. So I missed the opportunity. I should have gone straight in there, called him, had the quick QSO exchange, signal reports, names, location, that's it, job done. Anyway, I didn't, so there we are. Before we finish this video, I know every time I talk about radials, as I did earlier in the video, I get some questions about radials and so forth. And let me tell you my position on radials. If you've got a vertical antenna, then you certainly need some form of radial system. That's not actually true. You need some form of earth system, and I think I've mentioned before that I've operated vertical antennas with just a single copper rod in the ground. Now, it's not as efficient, not as effective as a radial system, but it does work, and you will have contacts. And in fact, I've actually got a vertical in the garden, which I'm going to talk about in some future video. But radials, so you need radials. There was a time when radials in the air were quite popular. It was quite popular to put the vertical antenna, probably a trap vertical on top of a mast about 20 foot or 15 foot above ground, and then have the radials coming down at an angle, and sometimes the radials actually form part of the support for the mast. It was rather untidy, but it did work quite well, and it didn't enable the vertical antenna to see a lot of sky, and of course that's one of the things you need. A vertical really needs to see as much sky as possible. But I think it's much more common, certainly these days, to have the antenna mounted at ground level. It's obviously easier to install it that way, and if you're going to have a vertical for 40 meters, a full-size vertical for 40 meters, of course, then it's already 10 meters tall, and having that on top of a mast, it starts to wave about a bit, and radials are going to be what are they going to be? 33 foot long, so that's 10 meters again. And the problem with radials, elevated radials, is they have to be resonant, and that is a bit of a problem, really. So all in all, on balance, an antenna mounted at ground level, vertical antenna mounted at ground level, is not a bad thing to have. You read all sorts of things about radials. How many radials do you need? And I think there was something that said you need 128 radials of a quarter wave long. Well, I'm not quite sure of the theory of that, and certainly I'm not quite sure how effective it is compared with less radials, but the fact is that not many people are going to put 128 radials a quarter wave long on the ground. I have found that it's the amount of radials rather than the length of the radials that is as important. And I was listening to a station the other day, actually, who was working VKs on 40 meters, and his radials, true, he had a full-size quarter wave on 40 meters, but his radials were only about 2 or 3 meters long. He had quite a few of those. I think he had about 30 or 40. But that really, to me, sort of confirmed my own experience is that it's the number of radials rather than the size of the radials. Now, sometimes you read people saying, oh, you need a quarter wave radial. Well, of course, you don't need a quarter wave radial, because a quarter wave radial at ground level is not resonant anyway. So measuring off 10 metres of wire and laying it on the ground and thinking that's going to resonate at 40 metres, well, it's not. It's going to resonate at some significant lower frequency, and it doesn't matter. I have found that if you put radials that are around about 3 or 4 metres long, and I don't know, puts 8, 10 of those on the ground, then that gives you quite a good vertical antenna, gives you quite good vertical performance. And there'll be plenty of people that say, oh, you need this and you need that. Well, that may be okay if you can put it down there. But I think the law of diminishing returns very quickly takes over on radials. If you can put 10 or 12 3 metre, 4 metre radials on the ground, then I think you're going to get pretty good performance. It makes sense to actually put them below ground, because in my experience, people that have vertical antennas often have small gardens. And the last thing you want in a small garden is lots of wires laying on the lawn. I mean, it looks untidy. It is a thing that you have to keep taking up if you want to cut the lawn. And it just doesn't really look the part. So, and I showed you early in this video how to bury the radials below ground. Just slit the lawn, put it in, do it this time of the year in March, April time when the ground is still wet. Use PVC covered wire. You don't want to use bare wire, because bare wire will very easily corrode, and you find in 2 or 3, or you won't find, but in 2 or 3 years time you'll find the radial system is not as effective because it doesn't exist anymore. So I always use PVC covered wire. It doesn't really matter what wire it is, provided it's electrical wire that will conduct electricity, that's fine. Stranded, single, whatever you like. Just make sure you don't want very thin wire, because you want something that is reasonable strength, and just put it in the slit, cut the slit, put it down there, just tap it down with your feet, and that's it, you'll be there. So that's my take on radials. As usual, thank you for watching this video. I hope it's been useful, hope it's been helpful. Radio conditions are gradually getting better. We've had some pretty ropey conditions on the HF bands recently, but I think on balance it's going to get better. And don't forget that although our shop is not open at the moment, we are very active in the mail order system, and I've very sort of pleased that I've had so many nice mails from viewers saying this and that about us. So we do put a lot of effort into ham radio. Been going for what, 48 years? Gracious me, 48 years, and we're still going strong. So there we are. In the meantime, enjoy your ham radio. That's what it's all about. Take care. We're getting there now, aren't we? I've had my vaccine, and I know they're vaccinating people 55 and over now, so it's all good news. And it won't be long before we'll all be outside with our FT818s or our IC705s or our KX3, KX2, working all sorts of DX with better conditions from sunny fields in the UK. It might not be quite like that, actually. Anyway, in the meantime, take care, and we'll speak soon.